It is 8:06 here at Y-101. The temperature outside is 52 degrees here at Y-101. And here with me in studio right now is Toombs County Superintendent Barry Waller.
Hello, Bryce. Good morning. First off, thanks for having me to be able to represent our school system here. And we want to just tell you how proud of you we are, being one of our own and coming on and standing in for Barney for some time when he was away. But we're just glad to be here this morning.
We're glad to have you here. You're here today to talk particularly about the Splost, and there are a lot of people who see these on signs, who see these on plaques in places, Splost dollars this, Splost dollars that. But what is Splost?
Well, first thing, the word Splost is not a real word. It actually stands for something. It stands for Special Purpose Local Option Sales Tax, and many counties, cities are able to levy this tax and have the voters to vote on it. Sometimes you see something called a T-Splost, which is a transportation Splost to help with roads and highways. This particular Splost that we're talking about is E-Splost, which is an education special purpose local option sales tax.
Okay, and are we with anybody on this, or does all this money go specifically to Toombs County, or does it go elsewhere?
No, this is actually a joint Splost resolution, and it always has been. The two school systems in Toombs County share Splost dollars. So Toombs County schools as well as Vidalia City schools split the Splost, the 1 cent sales tax. Actually, Toombs County is a little bit larger district than Vidalia City. Toombs County gets 52% of each penny, and Vidalia City gets 48% of it.
All right. Now, when will this Splost vote be? When do you vote on all this Splost money?
We are voting Tuesday, March the 19th, which is roughly about a week and a half from now, and it'll be a vote to see whether we continue the Splost or not. It's not a new tax. This is a sales tax that the county has been doing for many years. So it's not like it's a new 1 cent added to the sales tax. It's already been there. So we're just voting to make the decision whether to continue the sales tax or not.
Okay, and when you mention taxes to a lot of people, they get really upset about it. They're like, ugh, taxes. But, however, this goes to something a little bit different than what most taxes go towards. What do all this money that is collected through this tax go towards?
Well, I'm glad you asked, and the first part of your question there, I certainly understand being a taxpayer, and I'm a property a property owner here in Toombs County, and I understand when our property taxes get raised, sometimes it's not the most pleasant feeling, but this sales tax, it is a fair tax that everybody pays. Not everybody in Toombs County owns property, but everybody that lives in Toombs County and purchases goods pays sales tax. Also, just to digress a little bit, a recent study, a 2-year study, 4 different times at Walmart here in town, it was a tag study, 51%, the average of 51% of the car tags at Walmart on these 4 different studies compiled were out-of-county car tags. So, only 49% of the car tags at Walmart that averaged out over those 4 studies were from Toombs County. So, to say that, if this Splost passes, you've got people driving into Toombs County to purchase things from Tattnall County, Montgomery County, and Jeff Davis County, and Appleton County. That is all sales tax that we get to reap the benefits from. So, I can't sit here and tell you to go vote yes for Splost, but I can tell you the facts behind things. And also another fact is approximately 35% of all goods purchased in Toombs County are from residents outside of Toombs County. So they're paying sales tax that gets to benefit our schools.
All right. Well, so it's not just a tax, making sure people understand this. It's not just the tax of if you own this, you pay this. If you own that, you pay that. Everybody equally pays this tax, no matter what they purchase in Toombs County.
Right, and it's just an extra penny onto each dollar that you purchase things. So, and again, I do want to emphasize, it's not a new tax. It's something that we've already been doing. I'll tell you this, I can't speak for Vidalia City Schools, but they're pretty much in the same boat we are as far as a smaller school district, and we really depend on this to help with things. Now there are, and you asked this question a moment ago, Bryce. There are stipulations on what you can do with this Splost. You can't pay teacher salaries with it. You can't buy curriculum with it. But what this does, this helps smaller school districts like us to be able to do capital projects, to be able to build school buildings. The state, when it comes time to build a new school building, the state gives you something called entitlement funds that you've earned over the years. But as you can imagine, that's never enough. So when we built our new high school several years back, about 4 or 5 years ago, we had to use Splost funds on top of what the state gave us to be able to build the school. We purchased school buses with Splost funds. Right now we have roughly 33 school bus routes throughout the county, and pretty much all of those school buses, we're using Splost dollars to be able to purchase those school buses. Now the state does give us a few or a little bit of money to help buy, but it always takes the Splost dollars to offset costs. We can build schools. We can do things with technology. We can do things with safety and security, which is a new, highly talked about issue to do with our schools, and not only our schools, but schools across the state and the country as well.
Mm-hmm. All those new door things that they're doing, I know you have to have meetings on stuff like this. So was Toombs County, was it a move to do this new door thing as let's do it before we have a reason to have to do it? What was behind the thought process of that?
Well, I'm glad you asked. The state last year, the governor, Governor Deal, on his way out, amended his budget and gave a certain amount of money to each school district depending on their size of their school. And it was basically known as a school security grant by the state. With that money, we were able to dictate what we wanted to do. However, I will tell you, in most cases like that with grants, you can't pay salaries. So, we would love to have a resource officer in every school. Unfortunately, through Splost or through these state grants, you can't pay salaries to do it. So we decided what would be the first line of defense in the worst case scenario. Someone comes to the school and locked doors are. Mm-hmm. So we researched what some other school districts were doing around, and this buzzer system, pretty much with the camera, everyone in the office is able to see who is trying to get into your school. We know the majority of our parents, and that's not, it's not a big deal. We buzz them right on in, but sometimes when you don't know who's there, it's better to be able to find out who they are before they get into your school.
Right, and since the high school is the newest school that we have in Toombs County, it was built for the purpose of the double set of doors, one to go in and the other stay locked. Now I know if you try to add doors and all that to schools, that would cost a lot more than the buzzer system. So I think that'll be pretty effective in helping prevent something terrible from happening.
Right. In the high school, we said this the other day, that the high school is our newest building, and it was built with that safety feature. So when you come into the high school, you're pretty much locked off into one area. Now, a couple of our elementary schools, Lyons Upper Elementary as well as Toombs Central, when you came in, you had access to the entire school. We used part of that safety grant money along with the buzzers to build a glass wall with doors that mirrors closely to what the high school has.
Right. And before the high school, the upper elementary was the newest school that we had, and then it would be the middle school.
Right.
And of course, the primary schools and even the older primary school before they moved to the old high school were the two older buildings that we had.
Right.
So with that being said, is there anything else that this money has gone towards that people don't realize, like that door issue? Like, is there anything else that, behind the scenes stuff that this money goes towards?
Well, before you vote on a Splost referendum, you have to construct what's known as a Splost resolution, and the things that you put in that Splost resolution are what you have to abide by once the vote passes, if it's a yes vote. So we've already gone through all the creating of the Splost resolution. Our school board, as well as Vidalia City School Board, passed the joint Splost resolution. That's what it's called. It's called a joint Splost resolution, and that is what goes on the ballot. So once the school systems pass that this is the projects that we would like to do, both school systems have to do that. Then we have to get it certified and sent to the Board of Elections to be put on the ballot. So we abide by what's on that Splost resolution. Now, getting into some of the projects, we still owe about $4 million on the high school. And what I will tell you this is, the high school was built somewhere around 4 to 5 years ago.
Right.
Through the process.
Yeah, the class that is graduating this year was the first class to start. This will be the first class that attended all 4 years.
Right. So this is 4 years in the new high school. There was some planning probably 7, 8 years ago to begin the process of it. Mm-hmm. Now, what I'll say is a major thing to celebrate is through state entitlement funds and Splost dollars, approximately a $30 million high school, we only owe $4 million on it. So, you think $1 million is a lot of money, but when you're talking 30 million, 4 million is
right.
not. So once if this Splost resolution passes, the next Splost cycle, over the next 2 years of the new Splost cycle, we'll have that high school paid off. And we've done that without having to raise property taxes or raise millage to raise property taxes. So, being a good steward of the money that we have is very important for our community to know. So that is the first, that is the number one priority, is to get the high school paid off. We're going to continue doing, our plan is to continue to doing some renovations down at Toombs Central. We would love to build a new school down there. Unfortunately, right now we've got a few things that are standing in our way, and that is we don't quite know where a highway is going to be coming through down
Correct.
there over the next few years. But the plan is to eventually have a new Toombs Central. But as of right now, we're just going to continue to renovate. Teachers do or Miss Irie is the principal down there, and the teachers do a wonderful job down at Toombs Central, and we don't want to mess up a good thing going on either. So we're going to continue to keep that school going. We've got about 500 students down there that just doing some great things, along with the great things that are going on in town here.
Right. Now, I have never stepped foot into Toombs Central. I've been into the gym with pep rallies and such, but I never stepped foot into the school. Now, I did go to the old primary school that's over here, but would you say they looked about the same to compare for people that don't know what Toombs Central looks like, that know what primary school looks like?
Well, I'll tell you what Toombs Central looks like. It looks like the elementary schools that I grew up in, and most middle-aged folks grew up in. Toombs Central was a K-12 school for a long time before the plans were made to consolidate the schools to be.
And the schools have the first year the schools were consolidated was the school year of '88 and '89. I believe I'm correct.
Right. And I was actually a middle school student back when that happened. Toombs, at the time, Toombs Central went from being a K-12 school to actually a K-6 school, and then a year or two later is when the entire middle school became Toombs County Middle School as well.
Yeah, the only reason I know that is because my dad was actually the last graduating class of Lyons Senior High before the consolidation.
Right.
Now, if this gets passed, what would we do with what are some of the projects we have in store?
Okay. Well, I mentioned, and all this is tentative.
Of course. Right.
We do have plans in that Splost resolution, and of course I mentioned just a few moments ago that paying off the high school is the number one priority.
Right.
Also, continuing to do some renovation work at Toombs Central. Again, we mentioned about the buzzer system. Safety in our schools is the #1 priority. We're looking at doing some more things with cameras in our schools to be able to remote in. So, in the unlikely event that there was an intruder in the building, we make a 911 call. Our plan is to have networked cameras so the police department could then network in or remote in from the police station, because there's going to be a certain amount of time after you call 911 that it would take law enforcement to get there. But if they could go ahead and remote in, that's the plan, is to update our camera system to be able to do that, and also to have all exterior doors where our teachers and our staff could use key cards to have access controls to get in.
Right.
And to go along with that, technology is something that is very important, because smaller school districts, you only have a certain amount of money that local money has a hard time being able to pay for without raising property taxes. But through Splost, we have installed roughly 47 this school year interactive panels, which is like a flat screen television. I
was about to mention that. There's one in the middle school library. Over there, I have a TAP program, is one of my classes, and I saw that, and I was going to say that I had the privilege of working on that, and that was actually really cool. I really enjoyed using that technology.
Right, and we really focused at first on those interactive panels in our elementary schools. We have added a few at the middle school, but our goal is, and again, I keep mentioning that this is all tentative.
Oh, right. But keep that in mind.
Right, but our goal is to outfit the middle and the high school with these interactive panels as well. And then on top of that, you're always looking at how you can get better as far as your facilities goes. When the high school was built a few years ago, there were plans to build an athletic facility at the high school. Those plans, just like anything when you build a house, toward the end things tend to get cut. The plans for that athletic facility was put on hold. But through this Splost cycle, tentatively again, our goal is to build an athletic facility out at the high school that would include baseball, softball, track, and possibly soccer.
I did hear that there are rumors going around, and you are the superintendent, and that you're here, you can clarify stuff like that for people. That, of course, you keep mentioning that it's tentative, and that's what people need to keep in mind, that, it still has to go before the board, it still has to, meet the requirements, that the money, it is all what the money will allow.
Right. You lay out plans, and any school system that you come across, when they have a Splost resolution, they're going to list itemized priorities of what they want to do, and they tend to try to get as much checked off as they can, but it all comes down to finances and can you afford to do it. So there's things over the years that has been listed on our Splost referendums or Splost resolutions that you don't get to, but you carry it over to the next one, and hopefully you can get to it then. But again, these are tentative plans. If the Splost passage goes through, then our goal is to begin work as soon as possible on these projects.
Right. Now, when you say a new baseball field, that means you're going to get rid of the old baseball field, and that would probably mean renovations to what everyone knows as the pit.
Right, and on the Splost resolution, the pit is considered one of our facilities.
Right.
So we have talked about that as one of our facilities, doing some work too, and we all know that the pit is near and dear to our hearts, just like Toombs Central is near and dear to our hearts. So
the pit, back when it was constructed, it was a state-of-the-art place, and even now, the way the field, it literally is a pit, is where the field is, and people know it as the pit. So when people talk about our field, everybody knows it's called the pit.
Right, and I'll say this too. I've had the fortunes to be able to travel across the state to high school football games, and I'll say, and I'm a little partial in saying this, there's no better place in America to watch a high school football game than the pit. But one thing that anybody will tell you about the pit is parking on Friday nights.
Oh,
there
yes. Oh, yes.
Can be a nightmare. But the goal is eventually, and it may be 2 years, it might be 3 years down the road, if we get the baseball field constructed with the athletic facility, to turn that area to a parking lot.
And I think that would be a fantastic idea to keep people from parking all over in the graveyard and, just things like that. And I'm sure with that there's some risk with all that parking, and it's dark and you're not lighted parking lots, so
right.
It sort of puts a barrier on the school just a tad, when we have those high school football games. And of course, if this does get passed, when would these renovations and constructions begin?
Well, I guess what I need to explain now is there is still 1 year left on this current Splost. When you do a Splost vote, it is always a year in advance. So that when it comes down to it, you do not want a law. So they tend to overlap so that it's a smooth transition. Once we get a yes vote, we have the ability to go ahead and put shovels in the dirt if we want to, down at Toombs Central, or with the athletic facility.
Right.
It's just a major planning effort that has to take place. That gets involved. You get architects involved, and construction companies become involved when it comes down to doing multiple projects at one time, because our goal, between what we would like to do at Toombs Central and what we'd like to do with the athletic facilities, we would like to do them at the same time.
Right.
Just rather than prioritize one out of the other, you do them both at the same time, and you get to see progress in action.
Right. Now, I was going to make a statement about the technology advancement that we've had. Even in I'm a junior now, even since I've been in school, I remember using the overhead projector where you put the thing under it and it projected it on the wall. I remember using when the active boards, when we first started having those, they were on carts and you'd move it. And now I'm in high school, and that's when we started having those that are built into the wall and it just projects onto the board. And now we're having a new active board possibly put in place, and students especially could see this money in action every day.
They can, and another thing, Bryce, that you were talking about as far as technology goes, we're happy to say that pretty much across our school system, we are 1-to-1 as far as technology device goes. And when I say 1-to-1, that means for every student there's a device for. We have Chromebooks.
I remember when we first started, I was in 7th grade when those started becoming a thing that we used with our education.
Right, and Chromebooks, for those that don't know, are pretty much mini laptops, if you will, that every day across our school system, students are using Chromebooks to be able to reach the world out there as far as research goes and assignments goes. Now, I will say this. In my opinion, you'll never replace the teacher in the classroom and the direct instruction that goes on.
Right, of course.
But just as a resource, those Chromebooks, I was a middle school principal at one time, and we used them thoroughly. And last year at the high school, we were able to become 1-to-1 with Chromebooks and carts in every classroom. So, just kudos to Toombs County schools and to the folks in Toombs County that support our schools. Both of my own kids are in the school system, and I wouldn't have them any other place. So we live in a great community.
Right. Well, right now what we're going to do is we're going to take a break, and if there are people listening that have phone calls, we will take those after we come back from the break, if that's all right with you. It's 8:30 here at Y-101, and it's time for the ABC News break on Y-101.
They also have spray for your fruit trees. Vegetable plants will be arriving soon, and again, that's Heritage Ag Supply located in line. Give them a call at 526-3858, and we hope to see you there.
8:34 here at Y-101. It's 54 degrees in studio, and with me is Toombs County School Superintendent Barry Waller. And at this point, if you want to, if anybody has any questions for him, we will start taking phone calls. Of course, the interview is still going, so if you have questions upon what we have talked about or anything like that, the number is 526-8123 or 8122. Now, while you're here, there are a lot of people in the community that literally have no idea what a school superintendent does. So what are some of your jobs and responsibilities as the school superintendent?
Well, I go back to my days as a principal. I served as a middle school principal for several years, and last year I was at high school here. I tell our teachers, I've always told our teachers that my number one job as a principal, and I feel the same way as the superintendent, is to clear the obstacles that may come to keep our teachers and our students from being able to make progress. At the end of the day, that's what we're here for. We're here for our students and to help them succeed. And with that, I feel like moving out anything that gets in the way of our teachers, and I would rather that become my burden than our teachers' burden, because they're the ones that are in the trenches each day working with our kids.
Right. Now, if a little bit of your background, where did you start in the educational field?
Well, I actually started a few years in private education while I got my teaching certificate, and I came here to Toombs County, or actually Toombs County's home, and I came to work for the school system here, and I've worked locally here for 10 years, and then moved over to Hazelhurst for a few years. Coaching basketball was something that I did, and then after I got done coaching basketball, I moved into administration, and then have found my way back home.
All right, I'm going to stop you right there because we have a phone call right now. You're on Y-101 with Superintendent Barry Waller.
Oh, I am sorry. I called in at the wrong time.
Well, that's fine.
I do want to say I have heard on the news about the new security
Yes,
that
ma'am.
you have at the schools, and that is very impressive. So that's a kudos to keep the kids safe. I think that's a good thing. I don't know what you guys were actually talking about, so I'm sorry about that.
Well, hey, thank you for calling in, and I'll say this, and our principals and our teachers all agree, it's the number one thing is keeping folks safe. We talk, and we said the other day about educating kids, but the most important thing is keeping our staff and our students safe, because if they don't feel safe, they're not going to be educated very well.
That's exactly right. And I'm actually in a different school district, and I hope that maybe they're paying attention and that maybe they'll take some action, because you have to be proactive instead of reactive.
You're right.
And
You're right.
I've said that many, many times, and us in these small towns, we kind of get complacent and also have that false sense of security, feeling like nothing could happen here.
Right.
And things can happen anywhere nowadays, unfortunately.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for calling.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, if anybody else has any questions for Mr. Waller, the number is 526-8123 or 8122. Now, you were talking about, I know you worked in a few different school districts, and what were those?
Well, like I said, I started out working in private education here locally at Robert Toombs, and through that process, finishing up my certification, and then I came over here to Toombs County and moved from Toombs County to Jeff Davis. Through this whole time, I was coaching basketball, and I moved down to Jeff Davis and came in behind Coach Hugh McBride, who was there for many years and retired, and I coached basketball there and was an assistant principal, and then I moved into the principal role at the middle school, and for a few years there, I was both a middle school principal and a high school basketball coach, and at the end of the day, the people that were most affected by that was my family, because I was burning up the roads and coaching and being a building level leader 35 miles from home. And, at the end of the day, I had to kind of reflect and see what was most important to me, and that's my family. So I chose to give up coaching basketball, and I stayed on as the principal at Jeff Davis Middle School, and then the opportunity came to come home. Mr. Richard Smith and I began talking and got the opportunity to come home for a position, and moved into being the principal at the high school last year, and through that ended up here as the school superintendent, and again, I'll say this is home for me, and my number one priority here as the school superintendent is to look out for our county and what's best for Toombs County and what's best for our students and our staff and our school system.
Now, there is one question. You mentioned basketball. This question is from Barney. Now, Barney knows this guy that I'm going to ask you about, but this was a little before my time, or I guess I was alive during this time. I just had no recollection of what was going on. But he wanted me to ask you, how was it like to coach under Toombs County basketball coach Donnie Arrington?
Well, I'll say this first and foremost. I've worked as an assistant with Coach Arrington, but our relationship is a lot deeper than just working together as co-workers. I consider Donnie a really good friend. I consider him a mentor as far as basketball goes. He actually coached, and both my brother and I assisted Donnie at 2 different times. And I also kind of worked alongside him as well. As when I was down at Jeff Davis, I was the girls basketball coach, and Donnie was the boys basketball coach. So, but we go to church together. We're friends. We talk quite often. So I could share some stories about Coach Arrington that he's not here to defend himself, so I'm going to kind of hold off on. But working with Coach Arrington was one of the higher points in my life.
All right. Well, thank you. One question I'm going to ask now. You know how these interviews get when some people in the media, when they get somebody high and powerful over something, the first thing they're going to do is ask them questions that they probably don't want to answer. And the question I'm going to ask you, if you don't feel comfortable answering, you don't have to answer. But there has been, I've seen, I mean, I go to the school, so I know, the issue with the Freedom from Religion Foundation.
Right.
And I just want to hear and I'm sure the people do, I haven't really talked about it on the air because it's not my place to. So what exactly happened with that?
Well, I'm going to stick kind of to facts. And
Right.
The facts are, after a football game we won back in September, one of our parents posted a video of us doing what we do every Friday night, and it was more of a video of thankful to live in this community where we can
sort of a celebratory
video. Totally innocent, and someone was not happy with it, and at the end of the day we've reflected on what we do, and I'll tell you this, we are unapologetic about who we are, and we're undeterred about what we do. Now, there are laws out there that govern how we do things, or govern how we should do things, and we've just got to be smart about what we do. At the end of the day, we're going to continue to invest into the lives of our students, and we know what that looks like in Toombs County, and just pouring life into those kids. I think the overwhelming majority of our parents support what we do, and again, it comes down to we just got to be smart about what we're doing.
Right. And, well, thank you for answering that, because like I said, in the media, and I'm sure people, they watch TV shows and newscasts, just recently with CBS this morning, one of the ladies on there interviewed R. Kelly about some things, and he got, I'm sure you saw it, he got really emotional and over-emotional and got upset. So I guess that's the journalistic aspect of being on the radio or in the media, is asking questions. But see, what me and Barney usually do is usually very sports related.
Right.
So there's really nothing you can ask in sports that'll upset people. However, in other aspects, even in the education department, you can ask questions and people they just don't want to answer them. But I feel like you've answered all the questions that I've provided today. So is there anything else you'd like to add or tell the people about Splost before you go?
No, I'm not going to be one that's going to stand up and shout and go vote yes for Splost. I do feel like it was important to try to help educate if folks had questions about it. And, the biggest thing that I do want to leave here saying is this is not a new tax. It's not something that's going to be added to. It's already in effect, and it's been in effect for many years. So it's a continuation of things. So, I'll leave here and saying this, Bryce. We live in a great community. We're very proud of all of our teachers, our administrators, our staff, our students, and we got some great things going on in our school system, and we're extremely blessed. And I'm blessed to be able to be in my hometown. And at the end of the day, one promise that we'll make for our school system is we're going to do everything we can to be the best school system we can be.